Today I will tell you a story about an ordinary man whose life changed in an instant. I think we all could learn a lot from the people featured in this video. The 19-year-old Loren Shars from Great Falls lived an ordinary life of a teenager, cherished many hopes, and made plans for the future. He had everything he needed to be happy: a loving family, a good job, and of course, a loyal girlfriend. Loren was a cheerful and responsible young man who understood the need to work hard for his happiness, and that's why he ended up at the bridge construction site. The work wasn't easy, but despite his young age, Loren appreciated the opportunity to work. His relationship with the girl named Sabia was going great. They were in love and understood each other perfectly, spending all their free time together. It was probably their strong bond, along with the premonition of something bad, that haunted Sabia on that life-changing day. That morning, Sabia woke up in a bad mood, feeling a sudden anxiety attack taking over her body. She tried calling Loren, but he never picked up the phone during working hours. The young woman was feeling very anxious, and then she got the call that divided her life into before and after. A woman's voice on the other end of the line told her about a tragic accident. As it turned out later, Loren was driving a forklift along the bridge that was under construction, when suddenly one of the trucks broke the rules and overtook him at a traffic light. The young builder never lost his composure in stressful situations, so at that moment, he tried to find a way out of the situation, but the only thing he could do was veer closer to the edge of the bridge. By a terrible coincidence, the bridge began to crumble under him. Thus, realizing that he had to take immediate action to save himself, the young man tried to jump out of the forklift that was plummeting from a 15-meter height. Unfortunately, there was virtually no time to maneuver. The young teenager was caught by the seatbelt, and when he finally did manage to jump out of the forklift, he saw the 4-ton truck rushing straight at him. It may be hard to believe, but even having survived the terrible incident, Loren remained conscious all the time and watched his arm and lower body get smashed by the heavy vehicle. Rescuers quickly arrived at the scene of the tragedy and took the injured teenager to the hospital, where the doctors found Sabia's number in his phone and called her. 20 minutes later, Sabia was already in the intensive care unit, praying for Loren. Nobody told her anything specific, but judging by how many doctors and surgeons kept running into the room, Sabia realized that the situation was very complicated. All she could do was pray for her beloved boyfriend to survive. As it turned out later, Loren lost part of his right hand, but the doctors were still hoping to save the patient's legs. After many hours of surgery, the doctors came to the conclusion that they'd have to amputate the young man's pelvis, along with the lower limbs. This was the only chance to save his life, although the doctors couldn't make any promises even with this course of action. It's hard to imagine what Sabia must have felt at that moment, as she was waiting for the doctor's update. She said goodbye to her beloved 6 times, having lost faith that he would survive until the morning. However, what's really amazing is that Loren didn't pass out even then. He was conscious up until the doctors administered anesthesia. He even managed to write a short "I love you" note for Sabia the night before the surgery. Despite the realization that her boyfriend was saying goodbye to her, Sabia still refused to believe that it was the end. The doctors even suggested that the relatives say their goodbyes because Loren's condition was so bad that only a real miracle could have saved him. And jumping ahead, I just really want to say that the real miracle did happen 12 hours into surgery. The surgeons saved Loren's life, but the hard part was still ahead. After all, he was now a disabled person, and his life would never go back to normal. We can't know what we would have done if we found ourselves in Sabia's position. Whatever we may think, it's still definitely a challenge to choose to live your life with a disabled person, especially when you're a young and attractive woman. Some people told her to move on and give up on the hopeless situation and forget Loren. But as you probably already guessed, Sabia didn't leave him. Moreover, this incident made the couple closer than ever, and they even got engaged while still at the hospital. After 4 weeks of physical therapy, the young man came back home and began to adapt to the completely new life, in which everything was much more complicated than it used to be. Loren gradually learned how to put on his prosthesis and get into the wheelchair by himself, but he still had a lot of things to learn. While getting to the kitchen from the bedroom used to be an easy task, this distance felt like a journey now. The former builder could hardly find the strength to do ordinary household chores, but he understood well that he had to try hard for the sake of his fiancée. Thus, he invented unusual ways to do what he needed. He used his ingenuity to become as independent as possible. And in the face of obstacles, he found so many non-standard solutions that maybe a healthy person could have never even thought of. "My fiancé is an amazing person," Sabia said in an interview. He didn't just manage to adapt to new circumstances, but also supported Sabia. Now Loren is thinking about his future, as he wants to be able to earn a living for his family. In addition, the couple is planning to go traveling, and a little later they want to have children and raise them as good people. Well, after having overcome so much, they are bound to succeed. My advice to anyone who has experienced something like this is not to get stuck on what you can't do. Live your best life and appreciate what you have, Loren once said, making many people think about his words. And most importantly, don't go after what doesn't feel right. Find the right person for you, who will always love and support you, because none of us can be sure what will happen tomorrow. That's the story, friends. It may seem sad, but it's really about true love. What do you think about the woman's decision to stay?